We're very pleased to have two speakers from the Transportation Agency of Monterey County, and two issues are going to be addressed. One is the roundabout that is beginning construction, and the other is the draft sales tax initiative that TAMC board is considering. So first off, I would like to introduce Ariana Green, and she will be giving us the presentation on the roundabout. Ariana is the manager for the project. I don't know how long you've been at TAMC.
3 years.
3 years. Welcome, and after our Ariana gives the presentation, we'll take comments and questions, and then we'll go into the proposed sales tax initiative.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. Again, I'm Ariana Green. I'm the Public Outreach Manager for the Holman Highway 68 Roundabout project, which is coming soon. So I'm going to give you a brief presentation and then give you an opportunity to ask questions, because I'm sure that you'll have some. Just to get you familiar with where this project is happening, the roundabout will be built on Highway 68 at the intersection with the Highway 1 ramps. So here's Highway 1, here's the church where we are now, and here's Chomp. And this is the intersection that the roundabout will replace the existing signalized intersection. So this is a closer view of the project intersection. And again, here's the bridge over Highway 1, church is over here, Chomp is over here, and the entrance to Pebble Beach is right down here. And this is what the roundabout will look like once it's completed. So it's going to look very different than it looks now, but I think it'll be a major improvement, and I'm going to explain why. The project is estimated to cost just over $8 million. It'll probably end up costing a little bit more than that, and it's funded through a public-private partnership. The City of Monterey is actually the lead agency on this project, and another project partner is Pebble Beach Company. Our agency, the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, is also a funding partner, as is Caltrans, the county, and the Air District. So why are we building this roundabout? This picture is a perfect example of why we are, and I'm sure many of you have been stuck in this horrific traffic on Highway 68. It's not good for anyone. No one likes to be stuck in traffic, but more importantly, it disrupts access to the hospital, which is a really big problem. So we're hoping this is the number one reason why we're doing this, to improve traffic flow. So I'm going to actually show you a simulation that will show what traffic will look like during the same hour as that photograph once the roundabout is built. So it's a little hard to see. The vehicles are a little bit small, but you can see that traffic is flowing pretty smoothly. And this is assuming peak hours in the year 2030. So this is in the future when we're anticipating even more traffic than we have now. It's pretty amazing. And the reason why this works is because instead of stopping cars at a signal, a roundabout operates on yield control. So when you come up to the roundabout, you have to yield to vehicles that are already in the intersection, and then you can go. If there aren't any vehicles in the intersection, you can just go. And that actually saves a lot of time. Okay, so we talked a little bit about improving traffic operations. The city commissioned a study in 2012-2013 called an intersection control evaluation, where they actually looked at a roundabout versus just building a bigger signalized intersection at this location. And the roundabout won out in every single criteria. And one of them was improved traffic operations. So The roundabouts are more efficient at moving vehicles through the intersection. With this roundabout, there are actually some pretty significant environmental benefits too. Roundabouts don't require as much roadway widening as a larger signalized intersection would. So with this project, we were able to save hundreds of Monterey pine trees. And another really significant environmental benefit is to air quality. Roundabouts reduce engine idling, which contributes to air pollution. And that's why the Air District is one of the funding partners on this project and has been very supportive of this project from the start. Roundabouts are also much safer than signalized or stop-controlled intersections, and this has been proven by national studies. On average, roundabouts reduce injury collisions by 75%, and they reduce fatal injuries by 90%. Pretty significant. And the reason for this is for two reasons. One, roundabouts reduce the most dangerous movement through an intersection, which are the left turns. With a roundabout, you go around. You can only travel in one direction, and you can only turn right to get where you're going. And right turns are the safest movement you can possibly make. And the other reason why they're safer is because they actually slow the speed of travel through the intersection. So instead of having cars coming at the intersection going 40 miles per hour, they're slowed to travel between 20 and 25 miles per hour. So even if there does happen to be a collision, it's much safer and there are much fewer injuries. Another couple of benefits with this particular project are that it will reduce bypass traffic through the Skyline Forest neighborhood. And this is because there won't be those long lines backing up on Highway 68 anymore with the roundabout, because traffic will flow through. So we won't have people cutting through neighborhoods to get away from traffic anymore. One of the most important benefits of this project is that it will improve access to the hospital and to the peninsula. This is one of the few gateways to the peninsula, one of the few access points to Pacific Grove and the hospital. And so we really want to improve that access. And then another benefit of the roundabout is that it's pretty. It is an opportunity to really celebrate this area and to be a really beautiful gateway to the peninsula. This project will begin construction in mid to late April of this year. We anticipate that it will continue through February 2017. A lot of the work will be off the roadway. There will be a few short periods of road closures where there will be some detours, and our team will make sure we'll be providing more information about that in March. So we'll make sure that you all are informed about when those closures are going to be and what the detours will look like. Our goals for construction are that construction be efficient and safe. We are going to maintain emergency vehicle access to the hospital at all times throughout construction. And even if you're not in an ambulance and you really have an emergency, there will be a CHP officer stationed at the bottom of the closure and will escort people to the hospital in case an emergency. We want to have clear and timely communication throughout construction. That's going to be really important because if any of you have been through or experienced construction before, you know that it's bound to change. The schedule will change. There are a number of factors. Weather, we're anticipating still some El Nino weather that can definitely affect the schedule. So we're working hard to set up networks of communication so that we can get those updates out to all of you in a timely manner. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to do that in the next slide. We're also working around some of the event traffic. We all know that this area gets crazy during certain times of year, particularly over the summer. So there won't be any construction during AT&T. There won't be any construction during Car Week. And we're trying to work around some of the smaller events throughout the year as well. And we're also trying to minimize disruptions to the motoring public as much as possible, although you should anticipate some delays next year, or this year, excuse me. So how to stay informed throughout construction. The best way to stay informed is to sign up for our email notification. And we do have a sign up on the TAMPC Monterey website. I highly encourage you sign up for this. We will be sending out weekly updates throughout construction, so you'll get a weekly look ahead as to what the construction is going to be, if there are going to be any road closures, what times of day, all of that good information. So please sign up for those. We'll also be posting information through social media, Facebook and Twitter. We're also going to be putting out information to the Waze mobile app. It's free for us to send them information, and so many people more and more people are using it. So it's really a good opportunity for us to get the word out. We're also going to be providing information to local media and on the radio and through neighborhood association newsletters and other organization newsletters. And we also, of course, have a project page on the TAMC website, which we'll be posting information to. And in March, we'll be holding a series of community meetings in various locations around the project site. So we will hold one in Monterey, Carmel, Pacific Grove, and we've been asked to hold one here for some of the unincorporated areas, neighborhoods in the county. So during those meetings, we'll provide more information about what the construction schedule is going to look like and what the detours are, and we'll have handouts that show that information. And we're going to have a construction camera, which I'm really excited about. Nobody else is. It's really cool because you can go online and there'll be live streaming footage of the construction happening, and you might be able to catch some of the traffic around too. So that's the project, and I'm happy to take any questions this time. Great. We'll start here in the front.
It looks like if you're not going to connect to 68, if you're coming from, say, Monterey on Highway 1, you don't get slowed down at all by the roundabout.
This gentleman was observing that if you're exiting from Highway 1 South going towards the hospital, that now you won't get stuck at the intersection, and actually those folks have their own right-hand turn lane. Talking about this lane here. So that should be a much faster and smoother movement for those folks.
No, I'm talking about going down Route 1 to Carmel. So
Oh, down to Carmel.
doesn't that just stay on the existing road?
Yes, so you would just stay on Highway 1. This project does not affect Highway 1. This is going to be constructed on Highway 68. It'll be grade separated from Highway 1, so Highway 1 traffic there won't be any lane closures or anything on Highway 1. It won't affect that at all. Oh, good. Yes. Sure.
Living off of Highway 68 for the last how many years, we've had nighttime construction. And I was wondering, I assume they do that so that we can drive reasonably during the day. Is there going to be nighttime? What determines when you choose to do nighttime construction?
We have been looking at doing quite a bit of nighttime construction when we do have road closures, just so that we minimize the impacts to traffic. And so yes, the answer is yes, there will be nighttime traffic, and we can.
More expensive?
It is more expensive, so that is a factor. Yes.
Is the roundabout itself a single lane roundabout or two lanes?
It's primarily a single lane. They did add a second lane here because the most volume comes through in this movement. So they had to add a second lane just at the bottom here, and then it zippers up before you cross the bridge.
And then does it merge into a single bridge lane?
Yes. So nothing is happening with the bridge. The bridge will remain the same.
I grew up back east where there are lots of roundabouts, but I've seen very few out here. Do people know how to deal with the traffic? And what will be done to encourage education on right-of-way?
She was saying that she has experience with roundabouts on the East Coast, and that there are quite a few on the East Coast, but not so many on the West Coast, which is very true, although there are more and more roundabouts built on the West Coast and in California all the time. And we have received questions about how to navigate through a roundabout. So we actually created a series of navigational videos, and they're on our website, and you can it's from the perspective of a driver, so you can actually see what it will be like to drive through the roundabout. So that's available now on the TAMC website, but we will be doing more outreach once we near the end of construction to make sure people feel comfortable.
Could you please use your laser for us and show us how we're going to come off of Highway 1 and enter the roundabout and come across the bridge to come to this meeting?
Sure. So if you're coming from Monterey and you're traveling down Highway 1, you take the exit ramp as you would now, and you would get in the left lane, and then you yield to any vehicles that are already in the intersection once you get up to this line, and then you go around and through.
So the top of the map is south?
No, the top of the map is north, so Monterey is up here, Carmel would be down here. Was there did you have any other question? Or? Okay.
I've driven in England, and there are a lot of roundabouts everywhere, but they've always been on the level.
Mm-hmm.
And I live in Pacific Grove, so come across 68 and cross the bridge, and Highway 1 is, what, I don't know, 5,200 feet down below.
The roundabout will be at the same elevation as the existing signalized intersection on Highway 68. It'll be completely separate from Highway 1. So Highway 1 is still going to be down here. There's still going to be a bridge over to access, and the roundabout is only going to be on Highway 68. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any future roundabouts planned for this county for other major intersections where there's issues?
Yes. So in Marina has gone roundabout crazy. They built a couple of roundabouts on Reservation Road near their library a couple of years ago, and they just love them. And so they're looking to build, they just received funding to build another roundabout on Del Monte and Beach. So that's going to be coming soon. And our agency funded a roundabout study last year, and we looked at 23 locations around the county to see if they were suitable for roundabouts. And we should be coming out with those study results within the next month or so.
Hi, what is the cost per square feet in the real estate point of view? I know the project is 8.2 million, but how big a piece of land are you paving over?
I'm not quite sure. I do know that it's less land than a larger signalized intersection would take up.
Being a longtime resident of Pacific Grove, I've seen the patterns change of travel during these, like that picture that you showed. Mm-hmm. And I think that partially closing the DLI access made some impact there, but it seems like there are several employers who have their employees, like a couple of retirement homes in Pacific Grove, the hospital, Pebble Beach, they all get off work at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, did anybody take that into consideration in looking at these patterns, and also alternatives like public transportation, like incentives for people to carpool? Mm-hmm. And a second part of that question is lighthouse and phone. Is there anything planned for future to alleviate the problem of that access to Pacific Grove?
So to answer your first question, the simulation that I showed earlier does include the volumes of traffic, including the employees from CHOMP and everyone. It's just the peak levels of traffic, which is the heaviest. And we have been in communication with CHOMP to talk about alternative modes of transportation for their employees during construction, and they've been very open to that. They currently operate a shuttle, so they do have an employee shuttle that they use, and they're going to be extending the service of that shuttle during construction. They have sounded willing to look at their shift start times and maybe staggering them a little, but they're not totally flexible on that. So the good news is that the roundabout will take care of the traffic problem. So it will be able to accommodate the peak flows of traffic. we are working with them and talking with them about alternative modes of commuting. And then your second question, can you please remind me? I'm sorry.
Lighthouse.
Lighthouse, that's right. Lighthouse, there is a major issue, and we actually have included looking at Lighthouse and improving Lighthouse in our expenditure plan for the transportation measure. So I'm going to boot that one over to Todd when he gives his presentation. But we've definitely, everyone knows that something needs to be done, and so we're hoping that our agency can help facilitate that in the future.
For people coming down Carmel Hills Drive, it seems to me I read that there's an issue here that they're going to have to make a right-hand turn,
Yes.
and then they're going to have to probably go to the hospital and make a U-turn to get back.
Yeah.
Is that still the case?
That's still the case. And let me go back to the simulation so you can see what that movement will look like. Currently, that driveway is really dangerous to get in and out of. It's very close to the Highway 1 off-ramp, and restricting the left turn out of the Carmel Hills Professional Center was actually a condition of the approval for the Forest Pavilion development project, which happened years ago, and the city has kind of given the hospital a pass until now and making that improvement part of this project. So it's always been the plan to restrict that left turn out of the Carmel Hills Professional Center. It's just happening now. So the vehicle will come out of the driveway, they'll turn right, and then they'll come up to the hospital intersection and turn around. But it'll actually probably save people time. I don't know if you've watched people try and get out and turn left during the peak hours of the day. It's nearly impossible. And it's very dangerous. So it's actually even though it seems like an inconvenience, it's actually will probably save people quite a lot of time.
Just one quick comment. I just came back from the East Coast. The great advantage I found with the roundabouts, because I wasn't familiar with where I was driving, was that you can just go around again.
Yeah.
And again.
Right.
Until you figure out where you want to get.
Yeah. We call that taking a lap. Yes, gentleman in the back.
How much time is it likely to save somebody? How many tons of carbon is going to be reduced? And have there been a lot of accidents on this in the last 3 years at this intersection?
Those are all great questions, and I'm not I don't have those numbers with me today, but I can maybe get back to, maybe I can send them to you. Okay, great. Sorry about that.
The selfish thing is how much time is it going to save you?
It'll save you a lot of time. I mean, right now, the queues or the vehicles back up for over a mile here. And even during the heaviest times, the lines will only get 200 feet long. So it's very significant, a very significant improvement. And I've got the numbers as to how much time it will save back at the office. I don't have them committed to memory, but it is significant. Okay. All right. Thank you.
The simulation is great. It's really quite informative. Just a little background information on how we got here. The roundabout was a condition of approval of the last Pebble Beach plan. And so it's a mitigation measure for the traffic that was going to be generated with the additional development in Pebble Beach. So it was a requirement of that project. And just another note, it took a while to convince Caltrans that we should be building roundabouts. Initially, Caltrans opposed the roundabout, and finally were convinced that this would be a good approach. And it's nice to bring them along into the 21st century. Our next speaker is Todd Muck, who's the Deputy Executive Director of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. Todd has been in the transportation planning field for over 20 years. In fact, we began working together 20 years ago when I was at the Air District. Todd will be speaking about the draft sales tax initiative that TAMC is looking to put on the ballot in 2016. And I've been participating in the stakeholder meetings, and there's a lot of discussion, and hopefully Todd will fill us in on what the latest is.
Thank you, Janet. Before I start that, the question about Lighthouse Avenue, and Ariana mentioned what Community Hospital is doing with enhanced shuttles during construction. She didn't mention that Monterey Salinas Transit has agreed to have a reduced monthly pass from in the $85 a month to $13 a month. For anyone who works in the peninsula or lives in the peninsula and would like to use transit as an alternative, and that's one way we want to reduce the congestion on Lighthouse. And Ariana's working with a group of the employers on the peninsula, particularly in the Cannery Row corridor and the aquarium, on how to reduce employee-based trips during the construction period. So there's a lot of people working hard to reduce the impacts of this, and we realize it's a kind of a choke point on the whole peninsula, and so a lot of efforts going into limiting the impacts. Janet mentioned she's been part of our advisory group, our community advisory group for the sales tax. Monterey County is a big county with a lot of diverse interests, so we've been trying to broaden the discussion throughout the county, and we put together a discussion draft for a proposed sales tax, and I'll be talking about that. The whole goal is keeping Monterey County moving, and it's something that's not too difficult to explain, but our current roads are terrible. And that's not just here, it's everywhere. All throughout the county, Hartnell Road, some of these unincorporated roads have literally had no maintenance for decades because the county doesn't have any money to maintain them. Jensen Road. In the cities, each city has the same issues. When you look just around the county, there's well over $1 billion worth of repair needs. When you start to add in the cities, it's probably closer to $2 billion. And it's important because if you don't have any money to maintain your roads, it's a lot like having a leaky roof in your house and not being able to fix it, because then all of a sudden you have more than just a leaky roof, you have water damage, and you're talking about a much bigger bill to fix it. And what would it cost to maintain a road every 5 years increases dramatically as you delay maintenance. So you get to the point where after 20 years you have to reconstruct the road, and it starts costing in the range of $1 million a mile. So while we have those issues, our roads are in terrible condition, we don't have the money, and this local sales tax is going to help with that a lot. There are also other issues in the county: regional congestion, Highway 68, if you travel that corridor every day, particularly the times that people are coming and going to work, you'll notice that it's backed up constantly. Highway 1 has traffic along the peninsula. And some of our bus routes are overcrowded. This particular bus is line 23 that runs from Salinas down to King City. And it has times when people are standing on the bus going down the highway because there's lack of service. And that's just a direct result of the limited resources that we have for transit. So all of these are areas that we want to help improve. This is a crash at Castro Boulevard and Highway 156. It's our number one accident location or crash location in the county. And on the 101 south of Salinas going down to our South County cities, there's at-grade intersections that have people crossing, including farm equipment that obviously is much more cumbersome and goes slowly. And so there's quite a few incidents along that corridor. Our population is getting older with baby boomers hitting their senior ages, and the need for enhanced service for seniors and transportation above and beyond transit service, above and beyond being required to drive yourself in your own car, is something that we can help address. And then getting kids to school, not having to drive your kids to school, feeling safe that they have a safe way to get there with sidewalks and bike paths and other improvements is something that we want to focus on. the reason why our roads are in bad shape and why we haven't been able to do all this is the funding that we get for transportation is primarily the gas tax. And the gas tax hasn't changed since 1994. And over that time period, when you factor in inflation and improved vehicle mileage, the value of the 18 cents that was approved back in 1994, back when a gallon of gas was $1.11, has actually decreased to about 9 cents. So it's about half the value over the same period of time where it's a lot more expensive to do projects. Inflation, environmental requirements doing projects, so a lot more complicated now than it was back in the 90s. So we have less revenue, we still have our needs. And what we're proposing is become a self-help county, raise our own money in order to meet some of our needs. And the key to this is local sales tax controlled by the voters. We put together what we call an investment plan that lists how the money will be used, and it goes to the voters, all of us, and either gets approved or denied. And that plan lists how the money's going to be used, and the state can't say, well, we think your priority's over here, instead of where you think your priorities are. So the state can't take the money and they can't direct where the money goes. We can also use the self-help money as a match for grants, and that's a big deal because all of our projects are a quilt of various fund sources, trying to get up to the total dollar amounts. Ariana mentioned the Roundabout, where we have mitigation for a Pebble Beach development paying for about half of it. The other half is partly local money with your Air Pollution Control District contributing. Part of it's state money, part of it's federal money. There's probably, honestly, all told, when you really look at it, probably 15 different fund sources when you look at staff time. And so all projects are like that. It's very complicated and it's hard to get the total dollar amount. But having money locally that you can put up as a match draws in state grants and federal grants and makes your projects more attractive. So that's a big value of having a local sales tax. And what we're talking about is 3/8 of a cent. That's a fraction of a penny over 30 years. And I won't go into how we came up with 3/8 because it's so confusing, but it's really the amount of the gap allowed locally for a sales tax. But just to be clear, it's a little more than 1/8 and less than 1/2 of a cent. And it generates approximately, it's estimated to generate $20 million a year. And over 30 years, that's $60 million. I mentioned we've been talking to folks around the county, and this is a word cloud, if you're familiar with that. It shows various issues and important items that people have brought to us. I mentioned Janet was part of our community advisory group. I know Kayla is over there, who's on the group, but if I missed anyone else, I apologize. But we tried to get a very balanced, diverse representation. And in addition to those folks, we've had our board of directors, which is a representative from each of the cities and the 5 county supervisors. We've gone to all the city councils. We've had other community meetings, meeting with civic groups, and asked them, what do you think is how we should utilize these funds, and what are the most important issues? And you can see habitat, fill of potholes, bike safety, congestion relief, stormwater improvements, pedestrian safety, Highway 68. I mean, these issues, all the bigger ones came up more often. The smaller ones we heard from others. And we used all these to put together a plan and combined it with our safety data, looking at the areas that had the highest incidence of crashes. And what we have proposed in this draft is half the money goes to the cities and the county for local street and road maintenance, and the other half goes to regional projects. And our board is going to be considering this later this month on the 24th. And I think when we get to the board, we've been meeting with different counties and different groups, and we're probably going to end up with 60% going to local street and roads and 40% going to the regional projects. That's probably the balance we'll be at. But we'll find out on the 24th, and I'm really waiting in bated breath what they decide. When you look at the local roads needs, at 60%, that would be $360 million. And the focus is on pothole repair and maintenance, road safety, and things like adding sidewalks and bicycle lanes where they're needed, And then things like storm water drainage and maybe other new technology. That could be a roundabout, it could be signal synchronization to allow traffic to go through a corridor faster. But the focus of this is the pothole and maintenance, because $360 million is just a down payment on our bigger $1 billion plus cost to fix all our roads. And then looking at the regional share, we've got projects including Highway 68, looking at operational and safety improvements along the corridor. We're proposing $45 million for that, which is a lot of money, but it wouldn't be enough to say do a bypass, which is what some people would like. We're talking about operational improvements along the corridor, and we're doing a study right now looking at what is the best combination of operational improvements. We're looking at things like roundabouts because they have a lot of advantages, but roundabouts don't fit on every location and every circumstance, so we're looking at a range of different options. And we'll actually be having some public meetings to bring back some of the initial analysis and some suggestions and getting a lot of public input. So I hope you'll hear about this. We'll be talking a lot about it in the next year on the Highway 68 corridor. US 101 South, trying to address some of those cross traffic with the farm equipment. 156 at Casterville Boulevard and Blackie Road. That signalized intersection on 156 is our #1 accident location, so we're proposing to fund an interchange there. Imgen Road Parkway, currently there's a part of Imgen Road that's 2 lanes, and we have a plan for widening that section to 4 lanes and enhancing the transit service through between Marina and Salinas and the bicycle facilities through there. So we'd fund part of that. Highway 1 busway. While some people would like to widen Highway 1, the cost would be prohibitive. We're working with Monterey Salinas Transit looking at options to enhance bus service along Highway 1. And they'll be looking at options including buses on the shoulder, allowing them to bypass some of the traffic, and utilizing the Monterey branch line and putting a busway along the branch line to bypass some of the congestion in the mornings and the afternoons. And then the Del Monte Lighthouse Corridor, which Ariana mentioned, which would probably be combined with the busway along Highway 1, bringing the busway into Monterey, and then looking at improvements to reduce some of the collisions that happen on Del Monte and improving some of the flow between Lighthouse and Del Monte, because that corridor does connect through Monterey to Pacific Grove. It's the corridor where the visitors going to the aquarium most often drive on. And I think everyone who lives here has been on Lighthouse knows it's a difficult, constrained area for projects. I would expect a lot of this would be on Del Monte because of that issue. And then mobility for youth and seniors, I'd call it mobility and safety. The Safe Routes at School, as I mentioned, is to help kids get to schools and around neighborhoods. The commuter buses for South County and Monterey Salinas Transit would like to put a bus fueling facility down in King City, which would allow them to save operational money by not running buses back to fuel them and be able to put more money into service. The downtown safety and walkability is to make downtowns easier to walk in. Salinas adopted a vibrancy plan for their downtown. That specific project will probably be reduced as we put more money to local street and roads. I mentioned more service for seniors. FORTAG is the Fort Ord Recreational Trail and Greenway project. And I don't know if folks here have heard of that, but there's a lot of discussion about putting in a paved path that connects Marina from the north all the way down to CSUMB, connecting to Seaside, Delray Oaks, and Monterey out on that edge, with great access into the Fort Ord monument areas, and then access over to the Monterey Sanctuary Scenic Trail, or often called the Rec Trail. And that will provide a very enjoyable but back connection to allow people to get around all those developing areas without needing their car. And that project is on the list for some funding. And then habitat preservation, which is when you're doing transportation projects, you almost inevitably have some type of habitat impacts. And the way they're dealt with now is kind of piecemeal, where you have a few acres or fractions that have to be mitigated. And this would allow us to start a habitat bank where we can address combined habitat issues for multiple projects and allow us to have a more cost-effective solution to address them. At the same time, when you can combine them and maybe purchase a larger habitat area, it's better for the animals that you're impacting versus piecemeal. So that would just start that effort. One thing we've heard loud and clear is the need for taxpayer safeguards, and that's part of the plan that we're proposing. It would include annual audits, it would include Citizens Advisory Committee. The League of Women Voters would be invited to be on that group. Other community groups around the county would be part of that. A condition that it can only be used for transportation projects. No fund shifting. The amount of money we give to a city or the county for maintenance has to be not only used for maintenance, but the money they currently use for maintenance has to be kept in maintenance. So this is above and beyond the little bit of money they have now. And then a firm sunset date. I mentioned 30 years, and that's what's being proposed here. From our standpoint, you can't repeat the last line enough. The state can't take your money. We are in the process right now with the shrinking gas tax revenue, and we are having to identify $7 million to take it out of our state program over the next 5 years. And that's part of statewide $750 million that is having to take out of the state program. So a local tax would help us avoid some of that and have the advantage of us being able to deliver projects with more certainty and bringing more matching funds and deliver more projects earlier. The board released this draft that I'm talking about in December, and we've been going around to all the city councils making presentations, to groups making presentations, getting input, and we hope to bring a final draft to our board for consideration on the 24th of this month. And after the board approves it for release, we'll be going to the cities for adoption. The next step in this is we need the majority of cities representing the majority of the population in Monterey County to approve the plan in order to proceed with putting it on the ballot. Once we get that criteria met, we ask the county to put it on the ballot, and then it has to happen by August. And then the election day is in November. So that's when you'll all get a chance to weigh in directly on it. The reason why we are pursuing a sales tax right now and considering past efforts for a sales tax is that we've done polling pretty regularly over the past years. And in order to meet the 66.7 threshold, the 2/3 requirement for voter approval, it's a high threshold. In our last election in 2008, we hit 63%. While that would get someone elected, you can't get a sales tax passed at 63%. The last poll we did was in December, and it's been received very well. There's a lot of understanding in the community about our needs for transportation. It was at 68% yes, and then another 3% lean yes. So it indicates that all this work we've done talking to the various community groups, that we're on the right track. And so we're really, feel like we're on the right track, and we're wanting to move forward and get this to the polls. But we really can't do it without your help. We don't want to face more road closures or have our roads go completely to gravel. So that's why we're bringing it here to you to get your input and hear anything you have to say. So I'm done with my part, and I'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
There's been a lot of discussion about the effect of greater gasoline efficiency with automobiles, well, all vehicles. And that has the result that we're getting less tax based on gallons. How would that affect what you're talking about? Your tax would last for 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. And it would persist even if there were new taxes based on mileage rather than gallons. Is that correct?
The question was how would, let me see if I can repeat the question. There's discussion about other ways to collect taxes outside of based on gasoline purchases, and how would that affect this sales tax? And the only option locally we have to generate money is through a sales tax. Legislatively, from the state, that's our only option. The state, throughout the country, primarily starting with Oregon, but also California is looking at a vehicle miles traveled fee and changing the collection of taxes from gasoline consumption based to vehicle miles traveled based. Generally, they're talking about replacing the existing revenue amount with this new. So that's having an additional local tax still has all those advantages of being able to attract other grants and things like that.
You've made a strong case for the fact that we're so far behind in keeping up on all these projects that I think it would be great if we got the 3.8% sales tax and we also got more money from the gasoline tax, because we need everything we can get right now, I think, for our infrastructure.
So I'll repeat the comment. We need everything we can get. Yes, there's a question back there. Yes.
In Europe and the East Coast and Bay Area, on bridges, there are tolls. Why could that not be implemented here with perhaps the exception of agriculture and hospitality workers? So many people that come here just use our roads, and I think we should have a toll tax.
Well, tolls are a hot button issue. And I didn't want to talk about that today. We are evaluating whether we can toll the construction of the 156 project, widening the 156, 4 new lanes parallel to the existing 156, and a new connection to the US 101. And that's and it's not in the sales tax proposal because it's probably a $292 million project, and that's more than we could commit to any one project for the sales tax. And there's tolling. There's people who aren't familiar with it. There's different impacts to different groups of people, so you have to be really careful and really consider how it impacts everyone when you proceed with the toll.
I would like to know if you had thought about Big Sur climate, Big Sur, marina, the wind, and so forth, and what impact this would have on all the roads that are near water.
The question is, are we considering that? And there isn't any project specifically in this measure being proposed that would go towards either maintenance of the state highway along Highway 1 along Big Sur Coast or Highway 1 through Marina. Those are the responsibility of Caltrans, the state highway. And so we're really talking about the local roads, the local city roads and the county roads. And they're generally in the maintain what you've got mode. Any new project has to be evaluated for sea level rise and issues like that.
I know you mentioned that you didn't want to talk about the toll road 156, but I haven't heard anything lately. Could you just tell us where is it at
Sure.
this point?
Yes, Janet, how long? I was here a year ago talking about the 156 project. Yeah, our board directed staff to spend more time doing an in-depth analysis of the traffic and revenue potential of a toll facility. So that has just started with primarily consultant providing assistance, doing detailed modeling along the corridor all the way up to the 101 up to the San Benito border and down through the 156, and looking at various toll rate options, various local discounts, how those would change the diversion impacts of how if people would choose to use the toll facility or choose to try to avoid it. And we won't have results for another 9 to 12 months.
Was part of that project that there would still be the existing road, you could still choose to travel the local?
Yes, the current 156 remains open and free in every option. Yes, sir.
When Fort Hood closed several years ago, there was a discussion at that time of a road being built from Seaside to Salinas and perhaps onto 101, a freeway, sort of expressway sort of a road. I haven't heard any more about it, and I heard maybe a brief mention in your comments earlier about it. I wondered if you could bring us up to date on whether that's still viable, or the idea of it, of course, was to relieve 68 and allow it to continue to be a scenic highway, and would also relieve 156 by having a direct path from 101 to Monterey Peninsula that long-range commuters could use.
Okay, the question is about a regional road across former Fort Ord, approximately west to east or east-west. And I've been involved with transportation on Fort Ord for a long time, so I'll try to hit what you're talking about. There has been in the past been a larger vision for a road from say Delray Oaks across, and that has never made it into the official plan. What's still currently in their plan is the East Side Parkway that connects from General Jim Moore over to Reservation. And that's part of the FORA Capital Improvement Program, and they're moving, that's tied into the whole FORA development discussion. And there is a transportation study going on right now evaluating, updating the transportation network and looking at changes as development has happened and evaluating what their needs are. So there will be probably more information about that over the next 6 months or so. What I mentioned was the Imjin Parkway, and there's Imjin Parkway from what used to be the 12th Street Bridge on Highway 1, next to the Dunes Shopping Center where Target and REI are located, and going over to Reservation. And there's a section of that that's 4 lanes, and then it narrows to 2 lanes, and then it hits Reservation. And what we're proposing to include for funding in this plan is the section, widening the section from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. It's a little confusing. It's Imjin Road to Reservation Road. And while we are also, we describe it as widening it from 2 to 4, the preliminary plans include 3 roundabouts along that corridor instead of signals, so people can travel through it faster and safer. And there's enhancements to how the bus can go through, so the regional bus routes can take better advantage of it.
I just really appreciate the wideness of how you're looking at transportation, and that I live in Seaside, I see a lot of people on bicycles, and especially I think with the university. So having trail funding inside a transportation, I think will make it a lot safer for commuters, and there's a lot of recreation people, I think, coming from outside the area as well as inside the area. So I'm really happy to see that as part of this initiative.
Great, thank you.
I just had one question. Using roundabouts across highway, what are the speed limits that a roundabout can manage? Because it seems to me that the roundabout, higher the speeds, the more likely you're going to have tremendous accidents.
Well, when you're looking at a highway like 68 that's posted at 55 miles an hour, and generally people drive it at that or a little slower because of the terrain, you would be slowing folks down going into the intersection and making sure that they slow down to that 20 to 25 mile an hour speed as they go through the roundabout intersection. Versus right now where it's a stop, where it's a signal, and some folks get to go through and some people go to a complete stop. So that you do change the dynamics by requiring everyone to slow down, and that actually has a lot of advantages in calming the flow along the whole corridor. And the interesting thing is that even though you're slowing down for the roundabouts, the total commute time, the distance through the corridor can be less, because while you're slowing down, you're not stopping. And we'll wait and see what the study says, whether that works on Highway 68, but there's other parts of the country where that's been the result.
In the city of Seaside, the streets are full of potholes, and I want to find out in your proposal, do they get any priority, and are you handing the money to the city of Seaside, or 10C will do the repair?
Well, I will call up Mayor Ralph Rubio and ask, the share, which I expect will be 60% of the total, will go directly, will be up to the cities and the county to decide which projects they want to repair. We will be asking them to to maintain what's called a pavement management index, where they evaluate all the roads and identify which ones are the condition of every road. And when you do a pavement management index, really the goal is to identify the most cost-effective use of the money. While you might not fix all the worst roads, if you spend money maintaining maybe a range of your roads, you keep your overall index high. And so it will be up to the city to decide, and we'll just be supporting them. We'll have some conditions on use of the money, so it gets used for transportation projects, and it gets used the way the voters would approve it in the investment plan. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sylvia just addressed the issue that I have been kind of vocal about on the stakeholders group, which is the share of money going to the cities and the county. There should be a requirement that a certain percentage of that be devoted to maintenance. So we'll see how the Transportation Agency Board considers that, but given the deferred maintenance in this county, which is horrendous, I think it's very important that this become part of the sales tax investment plan. Todd and Ariana, thank you very much. It's been a very informative meeting. Thank you.